Hey everybody, want to update you the very latest on Hurricane Dorian. We've been watching it. This is meteorologist Tim Pandages. I'm 13 News Now meteorologist Craig Moeller. And Tim, quite a storm here, still packing a little bit of a punch.
Yeah, it is, and it's slowly moving off towards the northwest now, eventually heading towards the Jacksonville area and eventually towards Charleston, too. Overall, it's still a pretty sound structure, pretty strong storm. The winds, however, have expanded, and that's what we've been talking about for a while now.
That's a concern on the back end of this as it's coming by. We're looking at a prolonged wind event into Friday as we go really starting late Thursday night. The winds will really ramp up around here, but Friday, it's not going to be just a quick in and out. It's going to take maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's over very warm waters right now, and maybe even a little bit of some re-strengthening could be in the cards for the next 12 hours until some wind shear kind of takes over and dry air, too.
We're going to get into the forecast, but before we do, Tim, let's take a look over here at the radar. You can see this thing still a very healthy center of circulation. The eye not as beautiful as it was when it was a stronger storm. Thank goodness. You know, it's good that it doesn't look as defined as it was, but clearly you've got that eye there with the radar images and some pretty heavy bands back towards Florida.
Yeah, and some of the heaviest winds are literally right along the immediate coastline. They drop off dramatically the farther inland you go, so that's some good news that that track just was in a perfect spot, that the heaviest of the winds kind of spared the coastline.
Now, this system is pushing a lot of water up. We're looking at storm surge concerns along the Carolina coast. Let's talk about the 11 o'clock advisory, still a Category 2 hurricane.
Yeah, some minor changes to it. It's dropped 5 miles per hour overall in sustained winds, but remember that overall wind field has expanded in size. It's picked up a mile per hour in its forward speed, so now moving to the northwest at around 9.
And right now it is located about 90 miles east-northeast of Daytona Beach, and you can see about 205 miles to the south of Charleston. So we're referencing that because it is kind of heading in that direction, but before it hits Charleston, it is forecast to start turning.
Yeah, it's going to interact with that trough that's coming in from the northwest, and that's going to eventually push it out to sea, but scraping pretty much right along the South Carolina and North Carolina coastline.
And this is the change, I think, that we've seen just more recently from yesterday's forecast. All along we've been saying it'll be pretty close to Hatteras sometime, maybe around 8 o'clock or so. Yeah. Well, this is the updated track, and we found the European model was a little bit slower. The GFS was out ahead, and then late yesterday, the GFS started coming back a little bit more towards Euro. It looks like this slightly, and we'll say slight, but slightly slower solution is probably going to be on, and with that center track coming very close to Cape Lookout, most likely around 7 a.m. So it shows you the difference there from where it was prior yesterday to where it is now with the latest track. Still coming through, and it's interesting, that track very close to Ocracoke Island, right over it, and Buxton.
And the slowdown of the overall timeline means prolonged impacts in terms of the gusty winds and very, very heavy rain. We could see those rainfall totals scoot up a little bit because of that.
We'll be watching that. Now, it does continue to accelerate off, so we're not looking at a system that stalls and just dumps tremendous amounts of rain or, drives our tide levels to astronomical levels. They are, however, going to be higher than we've seen in a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, it could cause some moderate tidal flooding, especially at the high tide cycle Friday afternoon.
Yeah, and in that case, borderline, right around 6 to 6.4, maybe 6.4 feet. That would be right on the edge, moderate to major flooding. So we're going to be watching that. We'll break that down for you. So off it goes, and things will improve into the weekend. These are the new warnings that were up, and I guess the headlines now, no longer just a watch for North Carolina, but a hurricane warning.
Yeah, that means we're closer to the event now. The watch is upgraded to warnings, meaning that hurricane force winds or hurricane conditions are likely or imminent within the next 36 hours, which is right along that timeline we were expecting.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking for these to potentially get flipped to tropical storm warnings a little bit later on.
Right.
So we're going to be watching. All right, so that's it. Also, a storm surge watch is posted earlier this morning for the lower part of the Chesapeake Bay. So that includes Hampton Roads. We just want to give everybody a heads up. We are looking at the tides. Here's our future cast. It's one model, but it gives you a sense of the timing on this.
And something that shows is today is going to be a fine day. No issues at all. And even as we get into tomorrow morning, Craig, there's not much going on just yet. We're going to start to see things getting a little bit worse by late Thursday.
So the advice again today, if you have any outdoor preps, anything you need to take care of around the house, get it done now, because while there's a chance for a few showers later tonight or early Thursday morning, just kind of hit and miss, the real thrust of rain is coming later Thursday night and into Friday, and you can see that.
Yeah, it's really going to start to build in from the south and lift northwards as Dorian kind of sits off the coast of the Outer Banks or even right over it, depending on the exact track. And those strong winds will start to come on shore as we get into late Thursday night, Thursday overnight. and
so
really cranking.
Yeah, here comes that tropical rain as we go late Thursday night and into Friday. And you can see very heavy areas of rain. There may be some kind of convective bands that kind of form some more intense rainfall, whether that sets up exactly here or maybe a little farther north and west. That we'll just have to kind of see as it comes together.
Yeah, some wind-driven rain here right through Friday morning. And with that slowdown of the timeline, if you go a little farther out, this sticks around right on through after the lunch hour into much of the afternoon before it slowly starts to pull away.
And we were looking at this winds, the numbers you've seen up there, those were sustained winds. We are looking at winds probably for Hampton Roads. We were talking maybe 30 to as high as 45 or 50 miles per hour. Some of the areas near the water a little bit stronger. Down into North Carolina, the potential is there for even stronger.
Yeah, hurricane force gusts not out of the question. In fact, way over that some of the models are projecting. So
down to the south, we'll stress, but even around Elizabeth City, Edenton, we could get some of those higher gusts. So we just really need to watch that. Now, here's the problem as we go during the afternoon on Friday. While some of the moisture may pull away, and again, this is one model, rain may hang back a little bit, but eventually it'll start to pull out. Winds shift to the northwest, and in that case, we start to see the water levels in the bay coming down a little bit, but we're still going to see that highest high tide projected to be Friday afternoon around 4 o'clock, and the big concern will be that sound side flooding.
Yeah, the shift of the wind direction now coming in over land northwest as that storm pulls away could bring some serious issues.
Yeah, you think about Manteo, some of the other communities here that will be bracing as the water in the Albemarle and in the Currituck Sounds, the Pamlico, that all gets pushed towards the barrier islands. So the Outer Banks dealing with sound side flooding Friday afternoon. Good news, again, is that this thing should be progressive, should keep rolling, maybe a little slower again, especially if it expands to the north and west.
Yeah, and we'll see if that plays out. It's going to be something that time will tell. So.
Yeah, so we'll watch for that, but things do improve into the weekend. So, Tim, we were talking about these peak wind gusts. This is built off the European. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of towns and cities labeled here and some projected wind gusts throughout the timeline of the storm. We're going off the European model here, wind gusts. These are not sustained winds. So as we go farther out in time, as you see the storm center driving along the Outer Banks, you'll see these numbers start to go up. Here it is just off the coast of Wilmington. We're already starting to see our wind gusts up and over 20 to 30 miles per hour, much higher out towards Hatteras, seeing those winds nearly at 50.
And again, around Norfolk, probably not too terrible initially, but as Friday continues, you see those winds start to ramp up.
Yeah, and here we get close to hurricane force wind gusts in Hatteras at 73. Everywhere else getting much higher than that, too. It's an 80-mile-per-hour wind gust nearly in Edenton by the time we get to early Friday afternoon.
And around Hampton Roads, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, those areas close to the water. It's not a guarantee, but certainly a possibility we could get some winds in excess of, gusting up over 55 miles per hour. So it's one of those things we'll need to watch. Again, subtle differences in the location could have some impacts. If it shifts a little farther south and we don't get some of those heavier bands wrapping around, maybe we don't see the winds quite that bad, but this is the potential, at least per this model.
Right, and these winds are going to stay gusty right on through the afternoon because you still see the center there is over land near our area. It's not going to start to pull away until well into the afternoon hours offshore, and then those winds will slowly start to calm down from west to east.
You take a look here, Hatteras, backside of the system, and you're still looking at some powerful wind gusts potentially.
To see some of the strongest at the point of the storm.
So, again, this is based on the European model, but it is an indication of what we could be facing in terms of the wind gusts. As we go Friday night, still windy around the area, especially close to the water and near, talk about like the Virginia Capes and back, even around the bay. There might be a little secondary wind max that develops on the backside of it. We'll be watching for that, but eventually things should ease as we go later Friday night into early Saturday. So that's the hope. Your rainfall projections.
Yeah, absolutely dependent also on the exact track of the storm, but looks to be the heaviest of the rain the closer you get to the center of that storm. 4 to 8 inches, locally higher than that, and really a steep gradient the farther north and west you head away.
And it's kind of interesting. At some point, there'll kind of be that northern or northwestern extent, and there's going to be a real sharp drop-off. Right. So this is one of those things where we tell you to stay tuned. Again, it's track dependent. If it shifts a little farther north, these numbers could spread this way. If it's a little farther south and east, we could drop the numbers. But certainly something folks really want to take very, very seriously.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so at Sewell's Point, we talked about that water level potentially Friday afternoon reaching that 6.2 to maybe earlier it was looking like 6.4, but we've been putting up this range 6 to 6.4. You see how it compares to some of these previous real record points along Sewell's Point, and Sewell's Point is the official measuring gauge for Norfolk. So when we take a look at all of our records for flooding around Norfolk, we always gauge them at Sewell's Point. Hurricane Isabel, 2003 flooding was unbelievable around Norfolk. We had a lot of issues. Many of you that have been here for a long time remember that. 7.89, almost 7.9 feet. That was the water level there. Irene in 2011, 7.56. So with Dorian, we're expecting maybe 6.2. It won't be as bad as the record flood there with Isabel rather, but more than Hermine. And you can see down around Bonnie in 98, we had a 6-foot surge. So this is going to be up there.
Absolutely. It's going to be going down the record books probably for the tidal flooding and also the winds.
So we'll need to watch all of that again. Right now, not a bad day. I guess the advice is if you have anything outdoors to take care of, do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Today is going to be a fine day, and even a good chunk of tomorrow morning, too. If you need to do anything outside, you'll be all right with that.
All right, we'll have more updates for you. 13 News Now. Be sure and tune in for live updates. And, of course, we'll be keeping 13newsnow.com updated, our mobile apps, YouTube and Facebook. Absolutely. Lots of ways to get that information.